Joining us on set is Dr. Mohammed Tahir. He is a war surgeon and CEO of the Al-Resaleh Foundation. He's been working in southern Lebanon for the past few weeks. Thank you for being here, Dr. Tahir. So you're in such a unique position because you spent 7 months working in Gaza. You've now spent the last few weeks in Lebanon, in the east, in Beirut, also in southern Lebanon. Do these two conflicts compare at all? Is what you saw in Lebanon in any way comparable to what we've seen in Gaza?
First of all, thank you for having me. You know, when Gaza first unfolded, many people were not expecting to see the absolute carnage that it eventually became. And many people warned that this could become a possibility, and it fell on deaf ears. And I suppose what we're trying to say is the same thing in Lebanon. Israel is now turning the south of Lebanon into Gaza. And it's coming from from themselves. I mean, they've admitted that they want to turn it into Khan Yunis. Khan Yunis was completely destroyed city.
They're not targeting Hezbollah fighters, cells, things like that. They're just flattening towns.
They are wiping the south off the map. And the only thing stopping them is, the attempt of some resistance in Lebanon to fight back. But if Israel had their way, they would absolutely occupy the entire southern region of Lebanon, and they would do it tomorrow. And they have no care for life. And I've seen it. I've seen it in my own eyes. I've seen how they disregard life. They disregard the lives of women and children. I saw it in Gaza. I'm seeing it in Lebanon again. They use weapons that are indiscriminate. They hurt people who are clearly civilian. And it's, again, a series of unspeakable crimes that they're committing.
Speaking of the weapons, you were telling me off camera before that some of the injuries that you were seeing in the patients who were coming into the hospital in Sidon, I believe, in southern Lebanon, were these little metal squares, these little metal cubes. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so so one of the weapons that Israel uses is a warhead that contains thousands of tiny tungsten cubes.
Is this different from a normal conventional weapon that we would see anywhere else?
Well, I mean, it's one of many types of weapons that they use, right? So when you see shrapnel injury or the effects of shrapnel injury, sometimes you'll pick out massive pieces of metal coated on all sorts of chemicals out of the bodies of people. But these are very sinister because they're tiny, and when they explode, they just spread out indiscriminately. And when they puncture someone's body, they make a tiny little scratch on the skin. Sometimes you cannot see, but the devastation is all on the inside.
It doesn't look like anything serious to you.
Doesn't look like anything serious. But they can kill, and I've seen the effects of these. I saw it in Gaza. I pulled these tiny cubes out of people in Gaza. I pulled these cubes out of evacuated people from Gaza in Amman in Jordan. And I pulled out the same cubes from Lebanese people as well now. And, you know, I just don't understand how they can continue to use these weapons when they claim that they're using precision strikes. That's their argument.
This doesn't look precision to you.
Absolutely no. There's no way that this can be a precision strike because they're like nail bombs. You know how terrorists used to use in the UK, and I mean, we've got experience with those. And you just pack some nails in a bomb and let it just blow. This is effectively a modern day nail bomb.
My colleague Obeda Hito reported just now at least 103 Lebanese medical workers have been killed, 230 injured just since March 2nd alone. Did you treat some of those people? Did you see that? Are you surprised by those numbers?
I'm not surprised. We used to see our colleagues in Gaza come through the door all the time. I've had colleagues, nurses, medical students killed by Israeli weapons. And so the same policy of targeting healthcare workers it's a consistency for them. And you might ask, why do they do that? Did you
see any, just because the Israelis, they argue that Hezbollah is using ambulances to sort of move weapons, move fighters around. Did you see any evidence of that at all?
Absolutely not. And what I would say in response to that is the other day we had a journalist in Lebanon attacked, and the ambulance and the aid workers wanted to get to her, and they weren't allowed. So what was the argument there when she died in southern Lebanon? And we've seen the footage of the ambulance workers in Gaza when they went to retrieve some injured persons, and then they were all massacred. And then buried in shallow graves. So these arguments they carry no weight.
Are they changing our emergency responders? Are they changing their approach at all? I mean, is it safer in some ways for them to maybe go in an unmarked car, or do they really have no choice but to go in an ambulance?
So in Lebanon, I mean, of course, in Gaza they have no choice. They go willingly prepared to sacrifice their lives. But in Lebanon as well, you know, these, and sometimes they're Red Cross workers, not necessarily Red Crescent, Red Cross workers, right? And they go to the front lines and they pick out the injured, and they do that and they risk their lives. They are really heroes amongst us. They have no choice. I mean, if they go in an unmarked car, then the argument will be, oh, well, we didn't know it was an ambulance, it could have been anyone. So they go in marked cars and yet they still are attacked. What it does is it just demonstrates a complete disregard for international law, a complete disregard for the sanctity of life and all the human rights conventions.
The thing that I think is lost on some people is just the scale of the human displacement. I think there's more than 1 million people who have been internally displaced inside of Lebanon. So when you see people and when your patients are coming into hospital, when they leave, do they have somewhere to go typically?
It's, as you say, it's another one of the many human tragedies that are taking place, is the mass displacement. There's a lot of suffering that goes along with it. Imagine you and your young family having to live out of a car on the beaches of Beirut, for example, or anywhere where you can find a place to stay. Sometimes tents. The squalor that involves with that, the lack of hygiene, the lack of sanitation, the lack of dignity. And so when you have some of these injured persons come to the hospital, they have nowhere to go. And I've had this situation where some of my patients have nowhere to go after I've treated them.
So does that cause further complication, infection, things like that?
It blocks up beds. It means that we can't transfer complicated, because I'm dealing mainly with complex limb injuries. So I can't then bring some of those other injured persons in the far south. Because of beds that have been blocked, and there's a whole cascade of events that follow on from having this dire situation. But yeah, one of them is also aftercare. You've done complex surgery, and then where do they go? They go and sit in a car or sit in a tent where they can pick up infection. We're seeing in Gaza how that unfolds now. You've got millions of people living in tents, rat bites, insects, infection, dirt. Hepatitis A, we had that outbreak. You're going to have all sorts of things related to cholera and mass when people live in huge numbers in very close quarters, and the spread of disease.
I mean, in Gaza, a big part of the issue is the Israelis weren't allowing medical supplies, food aid, lots of things in. Yeah. There's still huge restrictions on that even today, despite the ceasefire. Lebanon is obviously a different kettle of fish. You don't have the same restrictions, but do hospitals there have what they need?
Yeah, look, Lebanon, I've been asked this question before several times. Lebanon right now feels like a war, like any conventional war might feel like. Of course, the exception to that is the far south. Gaza was a genocide. Gaza was a bloodbath. It was a killing field. They were restricted by land, restricted by air, restricted by sea, no food, no water, no medical supplies, and they were killed en masse. Lebanon, fortunately, we are still able to get medical supplies in. There are supply chains that exist. And, the problem for Lebanon is it's a struggling economy. And how do they fund the treatment of so many thousands of injured? And that's why, as an organization such as ourselves, we have to try to step in and to help, And it's also the displaced, for example, who might have chronic disease. What do? You need to help them. And then there's the Palestinian diaspora in Lebanon, which are not an insignificant proportion.
Yeah.
We try to help them too. So, if this carries on, if this is not brought to an end in an actual, not ceasefire, end to the war, complete end to the war, then human suffering will be untold.
Yeah. Dr. Mohammed Tahir, war surgeon and CEO of the Al-Resaleh Foundation. You are doing God's work, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.